Hi, and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I am Phil Long, Precision Agronomy Advisor with Latham High-Tech Seeds. This week, we're back out in the Latham Premier Agronomy Center talking about one of the demonstrations we did early in the year on Emergence. So, flag test, if you've ever done it, this was a flag test on our LH5487. I did it on a couple different ones to talk about how ear flex impacts when it comes out of the ground. So you can see here we were fairly uniform in terms of emergence. However, it's still spread over 3 days. We typically say, you know, it's ideally 1 to 2, 3 days max. You can see there's going to be an influence here on day 3 and as you go on out. If you have plants delayed much more than that, it's definitely going to impact yield. Typically 2 to 5%, but easily 10+% if you're talking a week or two in delayed emergence. So why is this important? This is on the front edge of the season. This is something the planter prep, making sure they're at the proper depth so that they can uniformly come out of the ground is really important. And sometimes just soil challenges when you're planting can be an issue, which is what happened here in this case. And just to go over how this particular hybrid handled it, we're going to talk a little bit about ear flex here. So remember, an ear can flex down in 3 ways. So early in the season, it's going to determine the girth or the rows kernel numbers around. So this is 16 around and these two are 14 around. So the girth in terms of row numbers around, that's emergence to V5, V6, V7 time frame, it's going to determine that. So if you stress it early on like this, if it's dealing with different stress, the different plants are dealing with different conditions and stress, the roots can stress it, all those things play a role. And if it's coming out uneven, it's going to be competing differently with neighboring plants. So that's going to impact those rows around. And then from V6, V7 time frame all the way through really to R4, when we get into grain fill, it determines kernels long, so the length of the ear. And then after that, the final phase that we talk about now is that depth or that kernel depth or the girth that way around. How it fills out each kernel is really that last phase, the 30% of the yield that's still in the field there at R4 to R6. So we talk about that a lot, but just remember it has a long way to go even once it gets to R4. So you can see on these ears here, we do have some tip back, and if you looked really close, there's a little bit of both. We had stress at pollination, so this particular hybrid does determine a lot of its stuff and, from emergence up to midway in the season. So that girth and rows around, kernels around, as well as the length. So it was dealing with stress right about pollination. So you can see, unfortunately, it looks like some of the silks didn't come out. It didn't pollinate at the tip. And then it's got probably at least 3 or 4 rows of aborted kernels. And that happens when you have stress shortly after pollination. So we definitely dealt with that here. We got our rains once we got into mid to late August, which was good for kernel depth. That's important too. Like I said, we get a lot of yield from kernel depth, but unfortunately, in this particular type of plant and ear, when we had that stress in that midpoint there during pollination, it kind of hurt it. So if we add all these things up, we can take a look. This is about from day 1 to day 2 is about an 8% drop in yield, and day 1 to day 3 is about a 30% drop in yield. So if we'd average these out amongst the plants that emerged, it actually would be close to a 6 to 7% yield drop in this particular test, in this particular hybrid. So that's why this is important. Make sure if you're not doing this kind of thing, you go out and flag it. That way this time of the year you can go out and take a look at this in the field while you're pulling ears, because it's important to understand all this interaction and the things that you do early season, how they impact yield at the end of the season. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-877-GO-LATHAM or visit us on our website at lathamseeds.com. Thanks for watching this week's Ask the Agronomist.